paid for the upgraded package, there's some really weird features, like you can let people call in, like you're a call-in show.
Oh my
like
God.
take
Ooh,
calls and
that's
stuff.
awesome. I mean, get
Which
that
is-
ready for later.
Yeah,
I don't know.
we're gonna need it for later.
I don't even know what we would use that for, but it's like, okay, that could be cool.
Good.
You can also do streaming and stuff, which I actually might use. I've been talking about doing some live reading events and stuff, which would be kind of cool. But okay, anyway. Hello and welcome to Behind the Locked Doors, a Library of Cursed Knowledge podcast phone call thing where we very off the cuff just talk about our upcoming projects. I am Scott Paladin, and I am working on an still as yet unnamed werewolf noir podcast, and I am here with Sam and Jack, who are working on As and West.
Woohoo.
Okay. Just to show how professional we are, I remember I asked you guys specifically 2 weeks ago what you were planning on getting done. And then I did not save that document. So I don't remember what you said.
Nice.
So you have lost accountability with me. You could say whatever, and I will not remember.
Time to gaslight Scott immediately. First thing out the gate today.
Yeah.
But first off, how are y'all doing?
Bro, I'm so scrambled.
The
Okay, to be fair, I work 3 jobs. I think I said this last time. And my day job is just like out of control busy right now. So every like spare moment that I'm not at that, I'm like doing my other 2 jobs. But me and Sam did talk a little bit between
Good.
last recording
cool.
and this time.
Yeah. I
Yep.
say good mostly because I want you guys to make. I want to see the original, the eventual product. So it's not like
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember the task I had set myself was I needed to come up with a list of monsters for the monster of the
Yes.
week, and I got like a couple of days into that, and I was getting nowhere. And then I realized that idea was stupid, which is actually progress. No, I was thinking about it, and I think I talked about this a little bit on the Breathing Space Discord, and I got a bunch of responses from people talking about werewolves, and I was like, you know what? The answer is that I shouldn't be doing a bunch of different monsters. I should be doing more werewolves. That the
More
people
werewolves. Stack
yeah, I
the
was like-
werewolves on top of
Yes.
each other.
Yes.
the main character he's going to be bounty hunting. It shouldn't be a bunch of random ass monsters. It needs to be other werewolves like him, or them. I don't know. Pronouns are going to be really weird with this character.
Meh.
Yeah. Pronouns,
like
yes. Yeah, there we go. Pronouns are going to be yes. So I can, because that thematically, I got excited about the idea of, okay, it's other characters like the main character. They are, they can be committing crimes and stuff. They can be doing stuff that would warrant them having a bounty on their heads, or they might just be existing in the world. And that creates some interesting dichotomy, like moral quandaries and stuff. And it also allows me to show progress over the course of the season. He can start off super violent and dealing with them, with the teeth and claws initially, and then later on we can show progress by him reaching out emotionally, which will be really cool. And also it says something when like you're struggling with an idea, you're like, okay, I need to come up with monsters of the week. Man, I am just like not going anywhere with this. I can't, like nothing's resonating. And then you take a step back and you're like, oh, what about if I did this other thing? And then I'm like, oh wait, I could do, a werewolf that's, committed murder. I can do a werewolf that's, still wanted for war crimes. I can do a werewolf that's like, I could do a wolf were. I could do a beast that became a man. Like, I'm like, once you have like 6, I immediately came up with like 5 or 6 things. I was like, oh,
34
okay.
flavors of werewolf.
It's like, oh, okay. That really indicates that I was trying to force this other idea that I had, and I needed to actually take a step back.
cool.
So that's my update for this week. I haven't actually done any writing, but I have done a lot of thinking.
Hey, you know what? I feel like you've made a very significant progress. Like, you've hit a checkpoint here
Yeah.
of like, oh, I want to go deep on werewolves rather than broad on monsters in general. I think that's
it
not
makes me-
anything.
It makes me excited to get to the next parts of writing and stuff, where it's like,
Yeah.
whereas before I was kind of like, oh man, that feels like it's going to be a slog. Now I'm like, ooh, yeah, let's do it. And that's always a really good sign.
That's really good. I love that
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah. So how you guys have been talking, what sort of progress have y'all made, or ideas have you come up with? I'm dying to know.
Okay, so last week that file that you lost, my goal for this time was to figure out what we're going to do in the first couple episodes and how we're going to get people up to speed that have not listened to Unspeakable Distance. Because again, just to reiterate, because this is a spin-off, I didn't want to make it so you had to go back and listen to Unspeakable Distance. You could just jump into this podcast.
Yeah.
And you
Which is
said
ideal.
something, you said something last week that really got me thinking, and you were talking about the old style noir and like the like those kind of old-timey intro things. And I was like, well, you know what? I really, really love the old, like the old-timey noir style like narration. If anybody's listened to the Penumbra podcast, that's like my favorite type of podcast, where it's like that detective narration over the top, because then you get all the feelings and all the thoughts of the main character real time. And you know, because in podcasting you kind of do have to tell not show, but you got to like tell in a really interesting way. So I thought that
I'm gonna put a pin in show don't tell. That is one of the worst pieces of advice anybody
it
ever
really
gives.
is. It really absolutely
We'll come back to it.
is.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. So what I thought was the first 2 episodes are actually like the pilot. It's gonna be like a the 2-parter. And the first one's going to be from West's point of view, and the second one's going to be from Az's point of view. And basically,
I love trading narrators.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna do that throughout.
We're gonna do that the whole show.
No, that's fantastic. I love it.
And so the point of the first 2 is actually it's okay. I have to actually tell the first part.
You gotta say what you told me over Discord, because I was dying.
So basically, it's going to start. Like, we're going to drop the listener right into the action. There's going to be explosions. There's probably going to be gunfire. There's like a whole bunch of shit happening.
This is Sam's problem. I don't have to just deal with this. So
I'm the editor. It's fine.
I'll tell you, narration helps action sequences so much. I've done it both ways.
But hold on, let me get to what's...
I'm sorry.
We're not even to the part that made me scream.
So it's basically like, you know, grunting and ow and all that kind of stuff, and then, you know, Wes being like, oh fuck, that hurt, that kind of thing, and then Az being like, come on, and they're running, and then you can hear like a not Paragonation, that's the wrong podcast,
wrong show, wrong podcast.
There's a some sort of
Preservation.
law enforcement or preservation officer after them, you know, halt, blah blah blah, and then you know, screaming at each other and running, and then a big explosion, and then everything, there's like almost like a record scratch stop. And then West is gonna do that really stupid, like, hey, see that guy there? It's flying through the air? That's me. I bet you're wondering how I got here. And then Az just like butts it. Are you actually starting this that way?
We're doing it like this for real?
For real?
I love it.
Basically, the first 2 episodes are a report on what happened with getting the ship. They are currently in the ship that they have commandeered, and the first 2 episodes are them explaining how they got the ship, so they can keep going back and forth between real-time, like, listening, I guess, like, what's going on, to back in the ship, like, why the fuck did you do that anyway? You know, like, kind of like a commentary on their own goings-on.
I like it.
And so what Sam told me, too, is this is still the West podcast that
right.
is going out to the listeners. Tell Scott what you told me about how Az gets up to speed about what's going on with Simmons, because I love it. It's so good.
I want there to be some sort of a bit for probably the entire first part of the episode of the pilot of Az not quite being on board. Like, he's super excited to be off where he was. Like, he's not stuck on that planet anymore. And he's kind of like, this is so dumb. Like, I don't know this guy. I don't know what's going on. I mean,
I literally don't know who Simmons is. Like, what are we talking about?
Literally doesn't know anything. What the heck is going on? I'm not really on board. And then Wes kind of being like, yo, it's okay. We got a ship. I mean, I'm not going to force you to help me or whatever. And then finally being like, here, listen to this. This is Simmons. This is who I'm trying to save.
Yeah.
And then
the
like
backlog.
Then basically the end of the episode is West doing his broadcast and then walking in on Az, and Az is listening to the Simmons podcast. We'll just take some mic audio and like throw it in there. And then he just pauses it and he turns and he's like, holy shit, we got to save your boyfriend. And like that. And then he's like totally on board immediately because he's listened to Simmons.
The minute you hear Simmons, you're on board. Like, he's so precious.
I love that. Okay, great. Yeah, sounds like you've got a pretty good model for that initial, that sort of pilot. Is the sort of recoup? You said it was that's sort of the first half of the pilot, or is that the full?
We're gonna do it in like 2 episodes, probably 2 parts.
You
Okay,
get
so-
all of West's thoughts and feelings and his motivations and what kind of happened to him and all that in the first one. And then the second one will be more of the same overarching story, but it's from Az's point of view. So you get all of Az's, like, what's going on with him.
Gotcha.
And his sort of morphing into, oh, I'm totally on board now.
And
I'm
that's
a Simmons stan. I've come around.
yeah, and that's an opportunity for y'all to also, if you want, maybe you want to save that for later, but it also gives you opportunity to give more backstory than even you had in
Yes.
Unspeakable Distance. You can cover
Yeah.
things that you hadn't really covered there.
Yep.
And because
There-
it's deliberately a recap, you can say some stuff that you couldn't. It's kind of hard to, like, it's, as you know, this thing that
Yeah.
everybody all experiences.
Yeah.
You could actually voice some of that now and actually probably give a better grounding, and it'll
Yep.
be more natural. That's great.
Well, and there's some stuff that, like, I think neither of us have got to in Unspeakable Distance that probably is going to come up in As and West. I'm really excited to get to some of that stuff.
Yeah,
About,
yeah,
like,
awesome.
where our backstories overlap in places
Okay.
that we didn't even realize.
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that.
West,
I love that
West
stuff.
might figure it out pretty quick.
Yeah, but Az is stupid and has no
I'm
fucking
thinking.
idea, so.
I'm thinking about, like, when the best time for figuring it out happens. It's going to be at different times. It's going to be sort of one of those kind of clashing. Yeah.
Awesome.
But I also did kind of do a very, very, very loose. What kind of episodes I wanted, because remember, this is going to be like a road trip buddy cop thing, and I thought, like, I made a list. I don't have it because it's not really finalized yet, but I want some sort of, like, they get pulled into a heist thing for, like, a single episode. They get pulled into babysitting duty for, like, one episode, and then
That's good.
I want the obligatory ghost, like, haunted house one, so, like, space ghosts. But then it's more like a Scooby Doo thing where it maybe
No,
is
it was
probably
Old Man
not
Simmons the whole time.
exactly.
love
But
it.
I made a list of, like, what kinds of episodes I wanted for all 12 of the episodes. So at least I have that too.
I love that. That's great. Can I have a small pitch for the heist episode?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I want to hear this too.
This is just a bit that I've never written into anything, but I would love to see, which is that, they do the and all of, like, the Ocean's 11 and stuff. They reveal halfway through, or not even halfway. They, like, go almost all the way through the entire heist, and then they, like, do the backup, and then they show you what the actual plan was the whole time.
Yes.
And I would kind of love to see where your point of view character, whoever it is, the narrator for that one, was never in on it and is like, y'all didn't tell me about any of this, and, like, call out
All
the
news
fact that,
to
like,
me.
and, like, I've seen it done in a dramatic way. I'd love to see it done in a funny way where it's like, come on, guys. Like,
You
This is-
needed
this would
to
be
not
the-
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is the show where it would come off as a good
Yeah.
comedy bit to do
Yeah,
that
yeah,
3/4 of the way through.
Yep.
awesome. Okay, can we talk about Show Don't Tell real quick?
Please.
Yes,
okay.
please. Yes.
This is one of those things. It irks me so much when I see. It's one of those things. It's any phrase that is that short has to be wrong in really important ways, right? Because life is big and complex, and art is really difficult to make. And so anything that sounds short and pithy, it's like that is such the wrong. Like, it will not tell you. It will be so wrong that will probably be counterproductive most of the time. The first thing, of course, is that Show Don't Tell was originally for films. It's not, like, meant to be done for storytelling as a whole. It was specifically for cinema, because you have moving images. Why would you sit there and talk the whole time when you could just actually show us what is actually happening rather than people talking about it? And for something as different as audio drama, the idea that you are, like, going to show on mic what is happening is so much hard. That doesn't even really
It doesn't
transfer.
scan.
Anyway,
It's totally
Yeah.
different.
the thing that I think a lot of people actually take away from the concept of Show Don't Tell is something closer to demonstrate, don't describe, where it's more about, like, giving examples of why these things are true, not telling the audience why that these things are true, right? Like, and that is that's a different sort of thing than Show Don't Tell. For example, a character could tell you about their backstory, about how they got into fights when they were a kid and how they got their nose broken one time, blah, blah, blah. And that is what that is actually demonstrating, is this character is angry and has anger issues and needs to work. That is their character flaw that we're demonstrating. Whereas if you just in the first sentence say, I have anger issues and I need to work on them, like that doesn't that's not effective storytelling. Whereas so it's like that's really the difference between show don't tell. But it gets so, because it is so pithy, it gets so often sort of misinterpreted, or people don't quite understand what that means, and they feel like they can't ever tell. They can't, like, they feel like, I remember as a less experienced writer being like, oh man, I can never have my main character tell the audience anything because I've been told show don't tell. I need to demonstrate, I need to show the audience those things. Whereas like that's not what that means. Like you need to just provide examples which communicate the things about your story that you actually are trying to communicate, rather than saying these things. And in fact, telling is telling in the way of like having a narrator or somebody in the story say things can be a really important part of your tool set. And it's just it's a matter of like understanding what you're trying to do with these story elements and then actually like using them to their greatest effect, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's my tiny rant about, well, not tiny, that's my moderate sized rant about show don't tell.
And why talk about show don't tell.
Yeah. I've had so many experiences because before I got into podcasting, I didn't write any screenplays, I didn't write any kind of scripts. I was purely prose, long form. I couldn't really do short stories or anything like that originally, but I was going to lots of writers groups and workshops and all kinds of stuff. And we have a really cool con here in Washington, NorwestCon, that happens in April every year. And we always have cool guests and there's great panelists, and it's actually an amazing networking opportunity for everybody. And they have the writers workshop. And the very first time that I went, I got into the writers workshop and I met Neil Clark, who's the Clark's World guy. Wonderful person. And he had so much really amazing information and just advice and stuff like that. And I had an amazing experience in this workshop, and it was so different than any other workshop I'd ever been in, because all these other workshops that I was going to had, I mean, how do I say this delicately? There were lots of good writers. There was lots of very dedicated, very excited, like great people, but a lot of them, the majority of them, either had never had anything published or they had never finished anything. There were mixed in people that had been published in magazines and things like that. But when you are constantly getting feedback and advice from people that have not actually been published, it's maybe sometimes not great advice. And most of the time I would, well, not even just me, it's everybody would put their stuff in for people to read. And there'd always be somebody that was like, show don't tell. And like, whenever they said that, I was like, well, you can't really show, you have to, what? Like, it was very, there'd always be one where I was like, I think that's not true. But
well, a lot of times feedback like that is well-meaning. It's not like they're trying to hamstring you, but like they simply don't know better.
Yeah. And sometimes people will just give advice because they feel like they need to give advice. And like, they have to say something. And so it was just really nice that first time with, not first time, but you know what I mean? Being in there with like people that had been published and somebody who was an actual like kind of guru in the whole industry being like, yeah, this is good and that's good and I was like, oh, okay. So I kind of, so I kind of understand. And it's a great like thing to have in the back of your mind, like when you first start writing, because I definitely have read some stuff where it literally is all tell and no show. So you can do it, and it's
there's a kernel in there. Yeah, it's one of those things. You're reminding me so much of. Did I ever take a fiction writing class? I don't think I ever took a fiction writing class, but I remember first year art critiques. For visual art, right? Drawing and composition and stuff. And it's everybody going around the room giving you all kinds of advice and critiques of what you've done. And they're all just as terrible at this as you are.
Yeah.
So none of them know anything more than you. And they all have to say something because they have to participate in the class so they can get their participation grade. But none of them fucking know anything.
Yep.
Whereas, so it's like 40 minutes of other people telling you things and then maybe 5 seconds of your professor, the one person in the room who actually may know something, then giving you the real advice. But
and
yeah.
if I can say, I did a year of graduate school for illustration.
Yeah.
And those critiques were 45 minutes of the students who didn't know anything telling you stuff. And then your professor who also didn't really understand what you were trying to do with your art and didn't like the way you made art and didn't like what you were saying with your art telling you stuff. And then I was like, okay, well, you know things about art like broadly, but you don't know anything about me and you don't know anything about what I'm trying to like do with this work. So at that point, it's like, it's so subjective that like none of this makes any sense. Or
there's a certain level where it's about like, you get to a certain level where it's not just about like, am I quantitatively good at writing or art or some other creative pursuit, but rather, am I the right person to be giving critique on this thing? You know, if somebody came to me tomorrow and was like, hey, Scott, I need your advice on this, trying to think of a genre that I would be just wholly unable to do, vampire teen romance or something like that, right?
Sure.
Like, something that I just don't have any experience with and maybe don't see the appeal for, I would give them all of the wrong advice. I'd be like, all of these characters are super simple and there's not enough sex and violence in it, and like you should, like all this, like I'd be giving all this advice that like would be ruining what they're trying to do because I am not experienced with it, and it's so it can be very difficult to find the right critiques. And I would definitely suggest that if you're in a situation where you're in a room full of other amateurs, like if they give you specific advice, you definitely need to be like taking a step back from it and saying like, okay, what are they reacting to rather than what is the specific thing they're telling me? Yeah. You know, if somebody says this isn't engaging with me for, you know, if they say, oh, blah, 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 I was bored through this or whatever, you know, I think you need to make it more action, you know, oriented or whatever. You can take away from it, not what they tell you should do, but rather, oh, this person wasn't able to engage with it because maybe that means my characters aren't, you know, engaging, or it maybe means that my prose is flat or something. But like you can take their reactions as useful without necessarily taking their specific advice about what I should be doing.
To fix it, right?
Yeah. May I share my absolute favorite 2 bits of advice that I've ever gotten on anything, because they're ridiculous. Please. Are you ready for this? Okay, here we go.
But go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that I mentioned something about how I'm also gonna try to do a horror podcast about a artist that's drawing things into reality and they're sort of weird, like with spider legs and shit. So I've actually wrote that story already. That's a full-fledged like novella story. And I took it to a writer's group that I had been going to for a couple months. The main character has a dog. And I grew up with Dean Koontz, and I don't know if you've read Dean Koontz, but all of his books have the main character has a dog, or he finds a dog, and the dog's always a really fun kind of. The dog never dies, which is great for me.
Bless.
And the dog always has some sort of like maybe, I don't know, connection to the supernatural thing that's happening, and I always loved that. I always loved that the dog like could smell super great or could tell if somebody was an alien or whatever. And so this story is very like eldritch horror, some weird shit's going on, you know, like lots of unbelievable things. So I had the dog do some not normal things that dogs would do because it's basically I'm stealing from Cthulhu mythos, all right?
This is a genre convention thing.
Exactly. It's also horror, so please calm down, you know? And so I got this the leader of the group was like, okay, so I work with dogs, and a dog would never, ever do this with its head. And if the dog is barking this way, this means this. And she gave me this rundown of like what a dog would actually do. And I'm sitting there like, I don't give a fuck what a dog would actually do. This is a horror story.
Totally beside the point.
And like she didn't look at anything else in the story. It was just how the dog was acting. And I was like, thank you. That's great. I'll take it into consideration.
Never speak to me again.
Yeah, please.
It's a very there's a story that Mark Hamill talks about with Star Wars. They were doing the first movie, and he got to some scene, and it was just after chronologically after the trash compactor scene, and he was like, shouldn't my hair be all messed up and wet and stuff? It's still like
Shouldn't I
perfectly
be
blow dried.
gross? Like I was
Right,
in
yeah.
the
We just came out of the trash compactor, and Harrison Ford says to him, "Kid, it isn't that kind of movie."
So true. So true, King.
Perfect. Yes. That's
We're not doing
Yeah.
realism, we're doing space opera.
But like understanding what the story is. Oh, hello.
yeah. Oh, doggy.
Oh my god, there's a pupper.
Hi.
I need
cute
everyone to know
doggy.
there's a really cute dog on
Scott
camera
always
right
He's
has
now.
demanding
adorable
attention,
dog
so I had to pick him up.
pictures. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so understanding what story it is to understand what kind of criticism is required, what it is trying to do in order to figure out if it's doing that well or not is super important.
The other one was basically everybody in the entire group telling me that this is a fight scene. Fantasy, we're in fantasy genre now. This is a fight
Good.
scene and there shouldn't be any jokes. Like, please don't make jokes while
What?
you're fighting. And I'm like, have you not seen Firefly? Like, what is
Yeah,
happening
like or
here?
any other genre thing
Anything-
where
yeah,
like
I don't-
Princess
there's a comedy
Bride. I
action
mean, come
scene.
on.
Yeah,
that's
Princess
like,
Bride would have been the perfect thing to say then, because it's
Yeah.
like high fantasy magic, like two dudes that are like, why is this happening? You know, like
Yeah.
they didn't want any humor within the fight scene, and
that's so wild.
I
love
didn't
it.
go back after that one. So
Yeah. Understandably. Yeah. Again, yeah, you just got to know, like, this is a meta criticism of all criticism, right? Which is that like the rules are, you get taught rules about art that are meant to be broken, but the point at which you break them is when you understand what breaking them does.
yes,
Or, do this thing, always do this is really good advice for somebody who literally doesn't know anything. But really the truth is when you do this, it communicates this next thing, or it tells the
Right.
audience this other thing. And so that gives you, rather than it being a rule that limits you, it becomes a tool that you can have in your toolbox to go, oh, if I do this, if I have my narrator lie to the audience, which is something that you could really easily tell a beginning author, don't ever do this, don't ever have your narrator lie. But the answer is like, well, if I use it, that can be used really, really effectively to demonstrate what kind of person this narrator is and to introduce doubt and ambiguity into my narrative. And so it's about understanding what those choices that you make actually do. And how it changes the story. Okay, now I think you want to go.
Oh, bye, doggy.
I was trying to take a screenshot, but I can't reach the buttons I would need to reach with my microphone in the way, so I'm just gonna have to burn that image to my
You want
brain.
to go down? Okay.
Oh, he's back. Cute.
Yeah, this is Twig, by the way.
Twig.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
cute.
listeners, I need you to know there's a little white dog in Scott's lap that has been like nuzzling his beard and like licking his ear, and it's so cute.
He's probably upset that I have headphones on because his favorite thing in the world is to give people wet willies. He wants to lick the inside of people's ears, which is
Delicious in
unpleasant.
there.
Yeah.
It's just
All
get right in
kinds
there.
of earwax flavors.
He's like, I want to put my tongue inside of you.
Twig, please.
Okay. Is there anything you all want to cover before we get into our sort of wrapping up and closing?
I think I really just need to sit down and legitimately write this first episode. And I need to get with you, Jack, and I want to know how much of the, like, do you want to write the second half of the pilot because it's from Az's point of view, or do you want me to do like the basic structure of like what's happening, because I have kind of an idea of how they steal the ship, and then you
Okay,
go in
yeah.
with Az's stuff and just add it?
I think the most useful thing for me would be to get like a fairly granular outline from you of what you think happens like actually in that second section in that second pilot episode, and then I can go through and Azify it, so to speak.
That is a new word. Add it to the dictionary.
Yeah. But yeah, if you want to write the first one and outline the second one, I can like go through and fill that outline out basically.
What if I did the whole outline, very loose outline, of the stealing the ship? It's going to encompass the first and second episode, the pilot, basically.
Okay.
And then I will leave little like brackets or sections or something of this is when we're gonna go back to the present and have Az and West be silly.
Okay.
And then about here is where we're going to cut it in half. Because
Okay, perfect.
if I just really, if I just write out what happens with the stealing the ship, we could add whatever the hell we wanted to with the rest of this stuff. We just have to make sure that stealing ship part is cohesive, I guess.
Yeah, cohesive and stretches across both episodes.
Yes.
I was just thinking that you guys are going to Statler and Waldorf yourselves, which is great.
Yeah, basically. Oh, and what did I say? I was talking about how, okay, so we also need to flesh out like the dynamic between the two of them, and I was saying something about how Az is, because he's a pilot, he'd have to have like good reflexes, so he just is kind of randomly a good shot. He's super hot, like, you know, and but then West is like kind of an older dude, maybe a little not, you know, he's not quite as physical.
Like an action hero.
Not an action hero,
type.
but he's like super ripped because all he had to do on the station was like work out all the time. And
I love it.
Oh, he's got a sleeper build. So
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it doesn't look like much
Yeah.
until he takes his shirt off.
Until
Yeah.
it flexes, and then you're like, whoa,
Yeah,
where
so
did all those muscles
basically,
come from?
Where do you
it's
get
kind
away
of like
with having a body like this?
exactly.
Yeah, literally.
So it's
Yeah,
kind of
I love
like
it.
Az is like what you would sort of. He is the action hero, but he's kind of, I guess, is he twinkish? Like, what is Az?
He's like
physically?
a stocky, almost tubby little guy. Like,
Okay.
He's one of those guys where when you look at him, I don't think your first thought would be like, this is a military, this is military personnel. But like, he does have very good reflexes. He is a good shot. He can think fast. But it's like the stuff that you need to be a mech pilot in this setting is not the same stuff that you would need to be like a grunt in the army. Like we were talking about, Francisco is probably built way
Yeah.
different than
Yeah.
Az.
That makes
You know?
sense.
But it would be hilarious though if even though Az is physically like that, he still kind of is very physical. Like he just sort of
he still
falls
gives
into
off the
it.
vibes. Yeah.
Yeah, and then in contrast, West is like just jacked and just super klutz, just like tripping over shit all the time. Can't shoot for shit, but could make a spaceship out of a gumball machine. So
Right.
yeah.
Awesome.
There's the
I love
dynamic.
it.
Okay, so
What's your plan for your
well, I was
next
gonna say,
2
recapping,
days?
y'all are now aiming. Your next step is as the outline. Yeah.
Like start writing the fucking pilot.
Start writing the fucking. Yeah. Start writing the fucking. I think that's
That's the
probably
name.
that's more like episode 8, probably.
Yeah.
They got to get a little more comfortable with each other.
Yeah.
We've just
ease into that. My goal is I've got to get back into episode 1 and just start writing. I never outline. I'm incapable of it.
You're valid.
Yeah,
It's not for
fine.
everyone.
I just write. So I've just got to get into episode 1. I probably am going to have to take apart some of what I have because I want to change some of the early character dynamics. But
You said you had like however many thousand
yeah, I got like
words
500
already, right?
words or so.
Oh, okay.
Not very much. Not terribly high. But I've got to take a little bit of that apart. So in revising that will give me the flow into the rest of that episode. And I'll have to figure out, you know, because that I know the structure of that first episode, which is the first part where the inciting incident where his friend comes in and asks for help and he helps him. Second thing is the reintroduction to the family that's the sort of the evil villains of this whole thing. And then the third part is the bounty hunting, where we get to finally see the werewolf come out. And I just have to figure out, I know that broad structure, I just need to figure out the specifics and start writing it. So yeah, I will hopefully have, I don't know, a couple thousand, another 1,000 words by the time we get back. That's my sort of stated target. I don't know if I'll actually get there or not, but.
Well,
Did you
yeah, because
say-
now we're coming into the like breathing space crazy recording
Oh my
season.
God,
I
yeah.
need
Yeah.
to do up my calendar with all like 500 recording sessions I have to be at.
Yeah, the good news is that uses a different part of my brain
Fair.
than the writing thing. The death knell for this project previously was that I was trying to write it and breathing space at the same time.
That's a lot.
All of the writing juices went into breathing space because I needed
Because
to
there was
get
a
that.
deadline for that.
Yeah, there was a
too.
deadline. I there was a reason to prioritize it. Whereas now, I'm not writing anything else right now. So, except when people ask me lore questions in the Fable for the Family channel, and I have to come up with stuff because I feel
On the
compelled.
spot.
Yeah.
No, I was like, yeah, that's just. We'll talk more about breathing space later at some point, I'm sure. 'Cause
I'm sure it will
right
come
now
up.
we're already running a little bit long. I want these to be about a half hour. So
Okay.
we-
I have a
Okay,
quick-
sorry, Sam,
quick
what was
question.
your-
Yeah.
no.
Quick question
No,
before
no,
we leave.
no,
You were
no
saying something
apologies.
about the evil family, and I was just wondering, did you say in the Discord somewhere, or maybe before, that the evil family is vampires? Is that what was
Yes.
happening? Okay.
That's the
okay.
plan. Because they're evil rich people, and that basically equates to vampires.
Excellent.
Right?
Mhm.
I mean,
I love
like, that's
it.
the convention.
Yeah.
And also, werewolves, vampires, it's like peanut butter and chocolate, you know.
Yeah.
They go
Um,
good together. Two
yeah.
great flavors that taste great. Okay, actually, here's another question though. What if they were also werewolves but meaner? Like just worse werewolves? Do you want it werewolves literally all the way down?
No,
or do you want
I would
one
like
other
some,
type?
I'm really down with the blood sucking
Okay.
rich
Down
people
with
thing.
the blood sucking.
Down with the blood sucking rich people, literally sucking the life out of the poor. I don't know.
Okay.
That seems really good. The one thing I'm actually
the yoking of like the werewolf, you know, being the underclass and all that kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like I've always really enjoyed that.
Mhm.
Although the
Yeah.
idea of rich werewolves that are assholes are also a great idea. Another
And they're-
podcast.
I mean, like I got 10 episodes. I could maybe introduce another aspect of it.
Uh-huh.
The thing that the character I'm still up in the air about exactly what she is the femme fatale, right? Like there's going to be it's a noir thing. There's going to be a femme fatale, and I've been it could easily be a vampire, a member of this giant evil family. When I was thinking about the monster of the week idea of there being lots of different creatures, I was kind of thinking about the idea of a changeling character, a character who,
Ooh.
in the traditional way of literally, the idea would be like they had an unruly daughter who they shipped off somewhere or
That's what
had
it does.
lobotomized or something, and this is the person they brought in to be that, to replace her. Literally
Oh
is
my
like
God.
So she's
to
like
play this
Faye.
role and take over for our unruly daughter.
Yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
is
get
so
the benefit of
juicy.
Yeah, I was like, that's got some meat on those bones.
That's
So
got
I may
some
not
juice.
completely abandon everything other than werewolves and vampires just so that I can keep that kind of idea in there.
Ooh.
But that would allow you at least to like not have to come up with literally a whole different type of guy every single week or like
Yes.
every single episode.
Yeah. So, and it could be, you could just use that metaphorically too. Maybe she's just a normal human pretending to be a vampire as well. That you don't have to go full supernatural. Although why not go full
Yeah.
supernatural?
Werewolves
Yeah.
and vampires.
Yeah.
Like, why not?
So that's still floating around there. She's going to have to get introduced in that first episode. So I may have to make a sort of broad decision on that. But anyway, well, I am one of those writers that I don't really know what I'm doing solidly until it's actually written.
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah.
The only reason that I'm outlining is so that I can write it with Jack. I can't.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
usually don't
this is like
outline.
a collaborative, like structural choice
Yeah.
that we're making here, and not
Yeah.
one that I would.
No,
usually
I
make for
totally
myself.
feel you on that. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so just to close out, y'all are doing an outline. I am just going to start writing. So that's our
Yeah,
plans.
do it.
All right. We will talk again in 2 weeks. See y'all, and
Thanks.
goodbye, audience.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for Behind the Locked Doors, a library of cursed knowledge production podcast thing. I don't know. If you are interested in any of these projects, you can head over to library.horse, which will eventually redirect to a webpage once I make it, If you want to support the podcast, we do have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/cursed knowledge. See y'all next week. No, wait. See y'all in 2 weeks.